Well, One-to-One Development Trust is a charitable arts organisation with a 30-year track record of delivering heritage, health and well-being and digital storytelling projects. We produce high-quality films, websites, digital interventions, using a range of new technologies including virtual and augmented reality. Our creative process is very people-focused and community-based. I'm the founder of One-to-One, which was originally set up as a film production company. We were set up to make documentary films that gave voice to people that at that time were not properly represented in mainstream media. These films were made for festivals or pop-up events and for local purpose. I went on to produce, film, direct and edit a few programmes for television, but quickly realised that my heart and interest was in communities and definitely not in mainstream media. Over the last few years, our client base has stayed similar. We work with charities, councils, the voluntary sector, the arts, including museums and libraries, and with educational establishments, including schools and universities.
I have a background as a fiction writer, but also as a games designer. I started out in the 1990s producing shareware and licenseware titles primarily for the Commodore Amiga. I would often, as you can see here, bundle a short story or even a novella in with my games. And this approach led me to start experimenting with digital stories online. And in 1999 I set up a website called Dreaming Methods, which in 2000, when I met Judi, became One-to-One's in-house games and storytelling development studio, or what we simply like to call our more experimental branch, and we started working together. I wanted to see what might happen if you integrated storytelling, text and poetry with the possibilities of digital media. The closest description I could think of for this was digital fiction. For about 10 years, Dreaming Methods published mostly unfunded, highly experimental, web-based narratives. We've been lucky enough to have won some awards for our digital fiction projects, both in-house and in collaboration with others. However, the boundaries between the mediums in which we work, from filmmaking and web design to art installations and particularly community engagement, have become massively blurred. Or, perhaps looking at it another way, combined, with each element bringing its own unique viewpoints and strengths.
We thought the best way to give insight into our creative approach was to share with you 3 recent projects which integrate how we use gaming technology, celebrate heritage, create and use films and engage communities. We won a commission from Wakefield Council to create a piece of digital work that would sit alongside Luke Jerram's Museum of the Moon, the huge floating moon that tours the globe. Wakefield's Festival of the Moon 2019 marked 50 years since the moon landing. We wanted to create something with a wow factor that would engage lots of people and that would look really good at a live event and being a draw for people of all ages to have a go on. So we hit on the idea of zero-gravity lunar library. We found pictures of Wakefield's first library van that dated back to 1969, the same year when Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Over 50 years, the library van has changed a lot to its current design. We thought, wouldn't it be cool to mod the library van and turn it into a space shuttle and have it orbit the moon? We had 10 weeks from getting the commission to blast off. We partnered with Wakefield Libraries to get as many library users and readers groups involved as possible in the project. And we got them thinking about which book would you take on a trip to the moon and why. 12 libraries participated and we had over 60 book reviews submitted. We put the actual book covers with our participants' reviews on the back into the shuttle where they all float all over the ship. We produced a series of short films interviewing local people about what the moon means to them. The films can be accessed and watched on board the shuttle, but were also used as part of our social media campaign leading up to the festival. We sourced archive photographs and footage of Wakefield in 1969, and these were exhibited within the Space Rocket Library.
We created Zero Gravity Lunar Library in Unity. We had very little time to develop it, so we needed a clear vision from the start. To construct the van, we adapted parts of a model of the International Space Station and a few assets from the NASA Public Domain Archive. We also connected one of the screens at the front of the ship in the cockpit to the PC's webcam, so that people could see themselves wearing the headset during the experience. We also wanted people who experienced zero gravity to get the chance to walk on the moon and plant the flag for Wakefield. And this served two purposes. With the festival, Wakefield Council were trying to engender a sense of civic pride. But we also needed a creative device to get people off the experience within a reasonable time. Landing on the moon, planting a flag of Wakefield as your oxygen supply counted down, ticked both boxes. We ran live sessions of Zero Gravity Lunar Library over 2 weeks, and it was seen by thousands of visitors under the glow of Luke Jerram's moon. We also projected the VR experience live onto a large wall. Audience reactions and levels of engagement were great.
900 Voices of the Neen, or the Nen, depending on where you're from, was an arts commission by the landscape partnership Neenscape. They wanted an artist or arts organisation to create an online archive of stories from the Neen Valley, with a full community engagement programme as part of it. The project was to mark the 900th anniversary of Peterborough Cathedral. The project started in February 18 and was launched at Peterborough Cathedral in December 18. In that time we worked with many community groups and ran pop-up events at festivals along the valley. Our aim was to capture 900 voices or contributions from people between Peterborough and Northampton for the bespoke archive and digital art installation, and I'm excited to note that the archive now holds over 1,500 contributions. But it was never about the numbers. It's deeper than that. It's about a sense of place, what a river means and symbolises, how it flows through people's lives, joins people together. It's home to wildlife, and it's a space for well-being and relaxation. We amass stories that are poignant, meaningful, and of the time, some funny and some sad, capturing the full spectrum of human life and experience. We used the motif of an origami boat throughout the project, onto which the participants crafted and recorded their stories of the river. As well as the archive and 6 short films, we wanted to explore our own relationship with the river by creating a digital installation of the point where folklore says the Nen became the Neen.
Our original idea for the digital installation part of the project was to create a virtual version of the River Neen. Not all of it, that would probably take about 20 years, but just a small cross-section, and to populate that virtual river scene with scanned versions of the origami boats generated throughout the duration of the project. We also wanted to make the entire thing interactive, so that somebody looking at and engaging with the installation could potentially freely explore this river's cross-section, a bit like a video game. The installation was designed to hold a curated selection of voices from the material we gathered in the online archive, and to display that content in an inspiring and interactive way. We sourced and generated photo-scanned plants, trees and grasses, and handcrafted the riverbanks. Detailed paper boats created in workshops and at events float down the river in a continuous stream. Some of the boats trigger audio interviews or anecdotes. Others offer beautiful little decorations or tiny handwritten messages. Using a gamepad controller or the keyboard and mouse, you can freely roam around this landscape. And when I say roam around, you can go pretty much anywhere, even under the water. The landscape also includes wildlife, so there are birds, fish, frogs, snails, butterflies. There's even an elusive otter. In an aim to better grab the attention of young people, we decided to create a game mode, which turns the installation into a more traditional video game, where you have to uncover 50 golden boats that are hidden around the landscape. This went down really well, not just with kids, but also with adults. The installation is quite dynamic. It was mainly created to be shown at the 900 Voices events, and as an engagement tool for Neenscape, and it requires quite a decent computer to run it. But it's also available on the 900 Voices website to download.
In 2019, we ran a continuation of 900 Voices by teaming up with social enterprise Dame Judi, a boat moored at Beckett's Park, which we converted into a floating cinema and art gallery. It could only hold up to 12 people at a time, but at each event we ran, including at the Northampton mailer, we had a continually packed boat all day. Our final case study is a project about preserving and curating our own work. It provokes questions about how society is going to archive and curate work that is digitally born. We'd like to start this case study by showing you a film clip.
In 2020, Adobe Flash will be removed from all web browsers. So everything created in that technology will disappear without some kind of intervention, some archiving, some preserving, and this is precisely why we've undertaken this particular project.
We started creating this type of work about 20 years ago, and over 20 years technology's changed, and we wanted to try and find a way to sort of save our own early history, as it were. So Digital Fiction Curios is an archive of some of those works, and as a sort of proof of concept, we've created an archive that houses 3 of those works.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
We wanted to create something a little bit different and a little bit off the wall, so we came up with the idea of a curiosity shop, and that's what Digital Fiction Curios is.
The idea is we use this project not just to archive these 3 pieces of work, that is very important, but also to test the technology, to test this idea, and if it works, we'll come up with a much bigger virtual museum to document a far greater range, a number of pieces of digital fiction to save these works. So if we don't save these works, they will go. So the literary heritage is gone, the technological heritage is gone. Imagine if we couldn't archive Shakespeare or Dickens or Mary Shelley. We would lose those works. We wouldn't want to lose those works. We don't want to lose these digital fiction works either.
Digital Fiction Curios emerged out of some of our wider work around heritage. We've created a number of virtual museums recently to house various collections of historical and culturally important material for organisations that don't have the physical space to exhibit. So the idea of creating a virtual space as a method of preserving digitised materials was something which we were already putting into practice. With Flash on the brink of total doom, and therefore our own body of early work under threat, the question became apparent to us was, could we make a virtual museum that houses Flash work as a method of archiving?
Rather than designing a traditional museum space, we thought what we'd do is create something more contained. So, in keeping with the character and mood of dreaming methods, we designed a quirky little virtual reality curiosity shop, the sort of place you might run into by accident down some weird cobbled back street. Judi and I chose 3 of our early collaborative Dreaming Methods Flash projects. Through Curios, these works are possible to explore in virtual reality. The projects retain all the original qualities they had when they were first created, almost 2 decades ago. Curios is packed with historical and educational snippets of imagery and information about the development of these projects, along with some rather fun text experiments and oddities. Curios also goes one step further. On a small table in the Curios shop, the reader, player, can find a virtual reality headset. And without wanting to get too Inception about it, you can pick it up and wear this headset to enter a kind of VR within VR, unearthing completely new immersive VR interpretations. Curios is available for free, or pay what you feel, on our Dreaming Methods itch.io page, which can be found here.
A lot of our filmmaking work has been on hold so far since COVID-19, but we do think we're really lucky to still be working. Our current focus is currently on creating websites and online platforms supporting children and young people's mental health. We're delivering a lot of online workshops with young people in creative writing and other art forms, and creating virtual museums for sports clubs for fans who are missing the live sporting experience. And we're producing interactive resources to inspire environmental change and action. We continue to refine our creative practice as artists and to be responsive to the current climate. We want our organisation to embrace the challenges that society is currently facing, to try and find creative solutions to bring people together, and to explore how digital technologies and creativity can support and define a way forward in the COVID and post-COVID world. Thanks very much for listening, and I do hope you've got some questions.